Hi, I'm Fire Chief Richard Kelley, and welcome to the third episode of Coffee with the Fire Chief.
This is Gourley.
Hey, Chief Gourley, it's Chief Kelley. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm good. How are you, man?
I'm doing well, buddy. Hey, you got some time? You want to meet for some coffee?
Yeah, sounds good. I'm in between meetings right now, so that'll work great.
You bet. I'll swing by and pick you up.
All right, good deal.
I think I got something you'll like.
That sounds good, man. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, sir. See you in a minute. In this episode, I'll be sitting down with soon-to-be retired Oklahoma City Police Chief Wade Gourley.
What's up?
Hey, Chief. What's going on, man?
You know, I've been a police officer for 35 years. I've never ridden in a fire truck.
There you go. First time for everything, isn't it?
That's right. I don't
All
put my seatbelt. Oh, there it is.
Yes, sir. Right behind you there. Well, thanks for joining.
You bet. This is awesome.
It's pretty cool. So I'll give you a little lowdown on the ride here. So this is engine 51. We actually have this at Station 1. So it has Station 1 right down the street from you guys. Has two engines actually there. So engine 1 and engine 51. This is a 2014, it's what's called a Pierce. It's the brand Teleboom, and that's the ladder on top. So it's a 55-foot stick, and at the end of that, it's got a nozzle you can put up the air, and it'll flow 1,000 gallons a minute. So
Wow.
it's weighs about 54,000 pounds. Top speed 68 miles an hour. So I don't think I could run away from the police. So I would like to say today you're with a trained professional. So hopefully we'll be good together.
I hope so.
I thought maybe if you don't mind, we'll take a little detour. I thought, you ever drove one of these?
I have not.
I might go out to training and
Yeah, you might want to be somewhere where there's not any traffic around.
we'll make sure we're legal.
So where do I go?
Just go straight and drive around. That's the thing, they actually have a pretty good cramp angle. They turn pretty sharp.
Yeah, it is.
So if you want to go all the way up, we'll go down and we'll do some.
Go way up and to the left.
Yes, sir. So when you go up here, we'll go in between the cones. We'll do what we call a serpentine. So if you want to go on the right side of that cone,
Okay.
and we'll just try to make it where you can go back and forth between these. So get as close as you can. And then once you get that rear wheel on that, you'll make that turn and go across. There you go. And then you can kind of see it here as you get that closer, and then there you go. Heck, you're an old pro, man. I think
Look at this.
we got this. I think we got an application. I know.
Hey, I'm retiring.
I know, it's perfect. There you go.
I got close to that one.
There you go.
It's pretty easy though, being out here with nothing around. A lot different being on a city street, I bet.
Really, once you know this, I mean, you've driven a scout car and done
Yeah.
all the stuff. Once you get used to it, I mean, you got to pay attention. It's all about paying attention
Yeah.
and knowing what the rig does. Look
Do
at
it
the
again.
angles.
Do the
Yeah, if you want to. Yeah. You want to back through it?
I'll try it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing on these rigs, we always have a backer. So I'll back you.
Oh,
And
okay.
usually, just so you know, if you lose the side of your backer, just stop.
Oh, okay.
Because that way you don't run them over.
That's a good idea. It's a good rule to have.
Yeah.
All right, where do I sign up?
Good job.
That's awesome.
It drives pretty easy, really.
It really does, yeah.
You start staring, it's like, it's not,
Yeah.
it's just getting in your mind. It's almost so nice, you get not so used to it, you forget you're in a big rig.
Yeah, yeah, get comfortable.
Yep, yes, sir. We'll head down to my office.
Okay.
All right, well, Chief Gourley, thanks again for joining me for coffee. I know coffee's not something you drink every day, but I do appreciate the opportunity to sit down and talk with you. And I just wanted to have some time together to talk about your career. And first off, thank you Thank you for serving our community, for what you do every day. You know, getting to work in public safety in Oklahoma City, I get to see everything, and I've really learned a lot from you, and I just want to thank you for that. Thank you for your friendship, and thank you for joining me today. I know you don't have to be here. You're kind of officially retired, but not officially retired, so you could be anywhere you want, more than likely. So, but thanks for joining. Yeah, just talking about your career, I know you've done a lot. I mean, you can't be in a large department like you're in, run and manage and lead in an organization like that, but just come up through the ranks in that, and a great organization that's done many things in our community, many great things. Tell me a little bit, if you don't mind, your career path, how you got here, you know, all the good things about the Oklahoma City Police Department.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting, you know, when you look back on it. I think you remember the story that, you know, they told at my retirement about. I had, which you let me drive a fire truck, so when I'm telling you this story, I had 5 wrecks when I was on probation.
I forgot that.
And they almost fired me. But I did so good at the board. I had such good activity, and not all the wrecks were my fault, but I still had 5 wrecks. And it's also interesting too, because when I applied for the job, I knew I was red-green colorblind. A lot of guys are, and they pulled out that book. I didn't know that was a requirement. And when she opened that book at the recruiting office when I applied, and I knew I wasn't going to do it. I couldn't see it, and they weren't going to hire me then. And I had to pay, I think it was $500 back then, is what I paid for a pair of contacts that would allow you to see red-green. And I wore them enough to get hired and then threw them away. Never wore them again because they were very uncomfortable. But it's just kind of interesting when you look back. And then also, Oklahoma City had a hiring freeze when I initially applied right out of college. Went to work in Chickasha just so I could stay close to the area. And then just a few months down there, and then the hiring freeze was lifted, and I was able to start the academy in September 29th, 1989. You know, never thought I would be chief, for sure. Just wanted to, it just was a fun job, you know, just really wanted to serve the community, and there was a little bit of cool factor there too, you know, when you're a kid right out of college, but just really enjoyed being able to help people. And I spent 7 years in patrol because I really didn't want to do much else. And during that 7 years, I became an instructor, you know, basic instructor, advanced instructor, was also, you know, defensive tactics and driving, had those certifications, was a field training officer, just really loving my job, felt really good at it. And about that time, a mentor of mine who had actually helped me get hired on the police department called me. He was a lieutenant out at the training center and asked me to go out there. And that kind of, you know, changed my path a little bit too. And really enjoyed being out there. He convinced me to take the lieutenant test. I took that and ended up getting promoted, and I was a lieutenant for 12 years. I enjoyed being a lieutenant, first line supervisor for us. I worked in a lot of different areas. I worked in patrol, I worked in records, I worked in crimes against children as an investigator, supervisor over that unit, CSI as a lieutenant, and then data systems, which was our computer stuff, and just really enjoyed it. And then one day decided I'd take a shot at the captain's test, and that was in 2009. And I got promoted to captain 2 weeks before the list expired because a couple people left early. And it just, you know, again, just kind of worked out that way, and ended up getting promoted to captain, was captain from 2010 to 2014, and I was in patrol. I also was a tactical commander over our TAC team, our SWAT team is what most people think of. Just loving it, didn't want to do anything else. I thought this is it, and as far as I want to go. And you know, it's real interesting too that when I got promoted to major, I thought, you know, that's it, man. That's really, I've made it at that point, and didn't expect. At that time, the chief promoted deputy chiefs by his selection. There wasn't a process or anything. And all of a sudden, while I'm a major, that process changed, and you had to go through like an interview and some other things. And I thought, why not give it a shot? And that was the very first time they had done that. And I finished #1 in that process and ended up getting promoted to deputy chief. And Chief City had been there so long, we didn't expect him to leave anytime soon. He had no plans to, and then lo and behold, he does. And I look around and nobody else is really putting in for the chief job. And I didn't want somebody coming in from the outside, so ended up putting in for that. And that's kind of a roundabout way, that everything happened. But it's just funny how your career, and of course, initially I was only going to do this for 5 years, and then I was going to go back and work in my family business and get a law degree. I wanted to go into oil and gas law and things like that, and just didn't work out that way.
So is a law degree still out of the picture? Or?
I don't know. As old as I am, it might be hard to kind of hit the books again, but I might get bored. You never know.
I love to see, obviously, your career progression. And I think when you see a lot of leaders, you have obviously those that have goals, want to accomplish things, but the intentionality of doing good where you're at, being the best you can right where you're at, that gives you opportunities in the future. And that's what I love about your story is you may not always been looking for that next step, but you were doing well and doing your job and understanding it, you had great opportunity to move up. So that's pretty cool. When you look at that, I always, I talked to you a little bit about when we were driving around, the driver position on our department. A lot of people, that's the coveted, they feel, everybody has their different. What was your favorite position on the department? If you said, man, that was where my jam was. That's what I loved. What was that?
I really loved when I was at patrol officer on the streets. I really loved that. But I think the thing that I look back on is probably, one of the most rewarding would be that time at the training center as the training sergeant. Because you have such an opportunity of, new people coming on the department, and you really have an opportunity to make a difference, with them. And it's funny how a lot of those officers that I trained in the academy, they're now part of my command staff. And of course, the stories, they remember everything. And I don't remember much of it, but they remember, how mean I was to them or whatever, or something I said. And it's kind of cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
I know you've accomplished a lot, and obviously it's a team effort. I know you've always given kudos to your team, and that's what good leaders do. But, one program that I'd like to talk about, and we're not afraid, not too proud to borrow, the OKC, the lead program that you guys have. It's such a phenomenal program, but I understand you were instrumental in helping develop that, and obviously you've had people come behind you and build on it and mold it. How did you come up with that? That's pretty cool. So
I've always kind of looked at different things around the department and ways to come up with classes that were just different that, I remember sitting through training. There's things that you're required to do, that you have to do, and it gets kind of mundane sometimes, and it just is what it is. But there's things that sometimes are kind of out there on the edge, and I remember I put together a class on the dangers of social media for police officers, and we were one of the first in the country to teach that. But I started learning that just by watching my kids use social media when it first came out. And so it was kind of in that time frame. I had just made captain, and I felt like, maybe now I got a little bit more say in things, and being at a higher rank. And I started looking at things around the department and people griping about things but not being willing to offer up a solution or fix it. And it started to kind of get on my nerves a little bit that, these people, they could point out a problem, and I'm talking about good officers. I'm not talking about people that weren't doing a good job, but challenging someone to come up with a solution. We didn't really have a mechanism for doing that, of if you see a problem, it's your job as much to fix it as to identify that problem. And so I just started thinking about that, and there was a sergeant on the department at the time that was at the training center, and I talked to her, kind of elicited her help in putting all this together and how we could do it. But the main concept was going to be, we're going to bring people of all different ranks together so that that patrol officer who thinks this major or deputy chief is out of touch and doesn't understand what's going on, that they're going to get a perspective from what they're looking at, as much as that major or that higher ranking officer, that captain, that lieutenant can't forget about the line officer out there doing the job, and their perspective, and that it's important, and that needs to factor into our decisions as well. So we sat down and developed a program where We have different ranks throughout the department, different time on. I think that first class we did, I think we had people as little as 1 year on, like just pretty much right out of the academy, up to people with 25, 30 years on, and brought all that together. And we brought in guest speakers to talk about leadership. And the unique thing about it was, in that first class, we thought, people in our department are always used to hearing from people in our department. Let's bring in some people from the community and other things. And so that worked really well to hear philosophies and leadership ideas from people that weren't in law enforcement. Because leadership principles are the same pretty much across the board. And so it kind of got their attention a little bit better. And I remember one of the things we just kind of thought of on the fly as the class was starting, and I was doing the introduction. I said, you know what, this first day, we're gonna talk about complaints, things that you think are not going correct or that could be going better. And then that's the last discussion we're gonna have about it, because the rest of the week's gonna be on how do we fix it, how do we make it better. And then the end game of the class, or the end goal of the class, was that we divide them up into groups of all these different levels and different ranks, so that they could all work together. And they had one of the problems that they identified, they had to come up with a solution and present it to the deputy chiefs and the chief. And that first class was just so successful in the feedback that we got. And even the chief and deputy chiefs at the time just loved it, because there were ideas that, things that they had been looking at and working on trying to fix, didn't have a real good solution for, but having that different perspective, they were able to do it. And then it also helped those folks that were in those groups that their ideas were selected, they had to follow it through. So you had to see how not only coming up with an idea and being the person that says, hey, let's do this, and then walking away from it, you had to finish it out. And I think it's really helped a lot of people in the department, a lot of our command staff now, as they were coming up through the ranks, went through that lead class.
That's cool.
And I think we started that, I think we did the first one in, it was either 2010 or 2011. And it's interesting too, you have to have mentors and people that back you and support you. And I don't know if you remember Johnny Kuhlman, one of our deputy chiefs. He's now the U.S. Marshal. I went to him because I had worked for him in another capacity, and knew, he knew me and trusted me enough to throw this idea out there. And he wasn't in my chain of command at the time, but I went to him and said, hey, I got this idea. I think you can help me push it. And he loved it too. And so, it always takes a team to make things work. But yeah, it's been a great program. I had to kind of let it go once I got to deputy chief, and one of my captains on the department, Aaron Bush, came to me about a year ago and said, hey, I want to pick this up again. I was like, absolutely. So he's done a great job.
Yes, sir. Well, we're going to steal it. So, it's a great program, and I appreciate you sharing that. And it's really cool. Just like you said, people are people.
Yeah.
And how do we learn from that? And I love the concept of allowing the opportunity to vent, but also saying, okay, we've done our venting, let's fix it.
Yeah.
Because, we can all identify the problem.
Absolutely.
But let's work together for the solutions, and that makes us better as an organization. So that's really cool. So I hope you don't mind me asking this, but a lot of times, you do a lot of interviews, you do a great job on the news, representing our city, representing public safety. But if you don't mind me asking, who's Wade Gourley outside of that uniform? What's Wade about?
Shorts and flip-flops and the lake.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably the best answer to that is I'm all about getting away from that police persona. I think what I've seen, especially through our wellness programs and others, and just growing up in the department and seeing people that struggle, with things in this job that we see on a day-to-day basis, is they don't have an outlet for it, and they get so caught up with it. They only hang around other cops, and you get caught in that bubble of only work, and then also too the negativity that you see as part of this job. And so that's one thing I always tried to, as much as I could, back away from that when I'm off, spend time with family, and do things. For me, we have a place down in Ardmore, and I got a boat slip on Lake Murray, and I grew up down there, so I know everybody down there. My family's down there. But for me, when I can separate and go down there, even though it's like an hour from my front door to the front door of the lake house, but just getting in that environment allows me to kind of push that aside and just be me and just be, just have fun and be able to relax and not worry about who's watching you or anything like that, or seeing somebody that maybe you've dealt with and it wasn't such a positive way or whatever. Because again, it's people I grew up with and things down there. So I think that's really what I've always tried to do, is just try to separate that and keep it so that being a police officer is what I do for a living. It's not who I am.
Right. That's awesome. I know you're pretty open about sharing your faith and very active in your church and all that. So I know that's a big part of who you are as well. And I appreciate how you carry that, how you talk about giving grace. And that, in your position, I've seen it. I've witnessed your character. I've witnessed your leadership of the challenges you went through. And I do appreciate that you carry that grace, that you emulate that. It's not just something you say. I've seen that. And I couldn't imagine having to go through what you've been through. So I applaud you for that, for sure.
Appreciate that.
I know you and I have talked about this before. We had a podcast together one time, but I know the bombing was something that was big in both our past. It laid the groundwork foundation for where I am today, and it's hard to believe such a horrific event. There was so much good that came out of it, and I think that's the part of focusing on those 168 lives of the good. Obviously, tragic, horrific event we'd not want to see, but tell me about your experience. I know you had mentioned before that kind of paved the way in your leadership and where you're at too as well, and somewhat.
Yeah, and I think it probably was the reason I stayed longer than, because if you look at when that happened, it was about at the time that I had said I was going to do this job and then go do something else. And it was always interesting to me too when we both finally sat down and told our stories, where we were at the same spot about the same time, but didn't know each other or anything. It was weird, but yeah, I think, like you said, the Oklahoma Standard, we hear that all the time, and I don't know people outside of Oklahoma really understand what that is, but even seeing the response to the bombing that day and the way all of us worked together out of necessity. I mean, we didn't have a choice, we had to. It was such a horrific and massive event at such a large scale, and something we'd never dealt with before or thought we'd ever see. And I think too, that event changed how we approach public safety in not only Oklahoma City, but in the country because of that. So yeah, it was something that changed all of our lives, but at the same time, like you said, in something that horrific, it's amazing how much positive came out of it. I think just the relationships we have now with other law enforcement agencies, with the fire department, with our ambulance workers, and all of us working together, we saw that out there, and you didn't have a choice. That was the only way you could respond to something like that. But I think prior to that, I know for me, being a young officer, I kind of thought as the police have their role, the fire department has their role. At that time, it was AmCare, but IMSA had their role. But you realize now it's all together. I mean, it has to be, for public safety. And even now that we respond to active shooter scenes and how we all train together and do that, it all came out of that concept of that bombing. And I think, as horrific as it was, and remembering the sights and sounds and smells of it, we would not be where we are today without that. I wish it hadn't happened. Don't get me wrong, and I know you do too. And all of those families, I wish they still had their loved ones. But you're right. When you look at in something so horrific, how could so much good have come out of it? And I think that's a big part of it.
I know your focus, and especially probably coming out of the bombing and other areas, you guys have done an outstanding job in your wellness unit and making changes in your organization. And, I really reflect on that a lot because, both of us in public safety and anyone in public safety, police, fire, EMS, we see things that are unimaginable sometimes. But what inspired you to do? I know you had some programs, but you really refined what you did and brought together your wellness unit. What was that inspiration, or what the catalyst that brought that forward?
I think just going back to the bombing and what we did, it wasn't that our leaders cared about us. I mean, and wanted us to get through that and be healthy. We just didn't have the tools to do it. And also, too, there was a culture among the police department, I'm sure it was the same at the fire department, that, I got this. I don't need help. You're weak if you go for that help. And so growing up in that culture and realizing how bad that is and how unhealthy it is, I'd always said if I ever got in a position that I could make change there, I would do it. And our wellness unit, prior to me becoming the chief, it was actually, it was pretty much one person that was doing it, and we had a chaplain too. Had some volunteers and other people, and it wasn't that it was a bad program, it just wasn't large enough for what we needed. And they reported directly to the chief of police. So even as a deputy chief, I had no idea what they were doing. And I remember when I first became chief, I sat down and met with our wellness coordinator at the time and listened to all that he was dealing with by himself. I mean, even with the chaplain's help and some volunteers. And I realized, man, this is way too much. I mean, what he's dealing with is trauma too. Right. And he was, just constantly on call and responding to everything. And so I knew we needed to make a change, but I didn't have enough background knowledge, not being a person that's trained in mental health or, as far as like a licensed professional counselor or a psychologist or something. I knew we needed something. I just didn't know what it was. And at the time, Deputy Chief Becker, he had just been to a conference somewhere and had met this chief that was retiring. I believe he was the chief in Aurora, Colorado. And he was married to a LPC. And they had developed this program. He was retiring, and this is what they were going to do. And I think it was called Code 3 Consulting, something like that. And so he told me about them, and that's what they did, is they came into departments and said, hey, this is how you set up a wellness program and what you do. So, it was very inexpensive, all things considered, and so it was like a no-brainer. We hired them, brought them in. They looked at everything top to bottom and wrote us a real good report, and I think we've implemented almost everything out of that. But it really saved the day because it gave us a roadmap of what we needed to do to get our people healthy. And it's funny, I tell other major city chiefs this all the time, that if you're looking at developing a program like that, if you're not, you're going to fail. I mean, you have to have that. But if you're looking at starting one from scratch, I said, get ready, because it's going to scare you at first, because you don't realize how many people are in need. It's the old, if you build it, they will come. But that's a good thing. And it's also helped, what I didn't realize, it's helped too with a lot of misinformation and things, because when people are unhappy, the job's an easy target. It's usually they're unhappy at home and other things. But it's also helped as I meet regularly with the wellness team, and they kind of give me ideas. Hey, this is what people are unhappy about. These are things that we're seeing people come in. They don't ever betray a confidence, but they kind of give me that general overview of, hey, this latest procedure you just put out, I don't think people are understanding it because we're hearing a lot of complaints. So it's been good in helping our communication with the officers too. But yeah, that consulting group really saved the day in giving us that roadmap.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, so Wade Gourley, 50th police chief, Oklahoma City. Wow, that's incredible. I mean, you think about like you said, the challenges before you, everything you've had. If you could have one thing you hope your legacy going out, what do you think?
I think it's it would be people, those people that I've trained, excuse me, that I've trained or helped along their career or mentored. That's how that legacy, I think, would be carried out, and that's more important to me than things or a piece of paper or something like that. Is those people that I've been involved in their life.
Sure. And that's why you're a great chief. I appreciate that you shared that. I hope you didn't mind me asking. I know getting down, you didn't realize coffee was going to be this heavy.
That's why I got water.
But I just want to say, again, as I said when we started, man, great job. I watched you, I witnessed you. I remember standing on the steps over there when we had some challenging situations going on in our city, and and being right there by your side and seeing your people and how they responded, and I was lost, not knowing what's going on, and I think we were all learning together.
Absolutely.
But I just have witnessed your leadership, and it's proud to call you a friend, and to see what you're going to do after this. That's the thing, and what I love about what you said is people. We have great organizations. We're so blessed. We have support of our community, support of our leaders, but the reality, it's about the people. We have all the cool fire trucks that you got to drive, the cool helicopters we get to fly in, the great things we have. But if we didn't have the people and take care of them, we wouldn't be able to do anything. So thank you for sharing that.
You bet.
I know it means a lot to hear from you, and thank you for joining me for coffee. And just got one thing to finish up here as we go through. So just let you know, Chief, you've been mugged.
Absolutely. This is awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I love doing something where I get a present.